as Jason had alluded to, a couple of you had made comments about Bedlam, and J Ford 2011 says, I believe if Kentucky and Louisville can continue their rivalry, I think Oklahoma and Oklahoma State can continue Bedlam. Well, if the SEC stays within 8 games, excuse me, if the SEC stays with an 8-game conference season, then it's obviously going to be more feasible for Oklahoma to maintain a rivalry with 4 non-conference games to play with, as opposed to the SEC may be thinking, and I know there's talk out there, and it's real talk, and actually Nick Saban is for a 9-game conference season, because the more teams that you add, if you stay with an 8-game conference season, then it becomes more difficult to have a legitimate conference championship. When if you're playing 8 games, you're missing 7 teams every year in the schedule. 16 teams, 15 other teams for every team, and you're missing 7 games, 7 teams in your schedule if you stay with 8 games. And it's just a difficult rotation to get to play everyone on a fairly regular basis, as opposed to going to 9 games. And then what that does to a team like Oklahoma in their non-conference schedule is, if they're looking at only 3 games that they can schedule non-conference, and if they're always going to play Oklahoma State, then that gives them little scheduling flexibility. And if they want to go out and schedule a major power, are they going to want to play an SEC schedule, Oklahoma State, who at any time could be a really good team, they have been, and then go out and play Penn State or Oregon or somebody else as a non-conference opponent? So I would think that Oklahoma wants to have a little bit more scheduling flexibility than what that would present.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the rigors, whether it's an 8 or a 9 game schedule, conference schedule in the SEC, the rigors of an SEC schedule, obviously Kentucky has to go through that as well, right? But I think the rigors of that type of schedule will is a big player in terms of what Oklahoma and Oklahoma State want to do. But I think it's been fairly documented that Oklahoma State is in a position where they don't necessarily want to play Oklahoma moving forward. I think Oklahoma's been in the position where, yeah, we want to try to make it work. You know, anything that we can do to make this work, to play this game, we want to do it. So I think it's, I think it's a little bit of still. I think there's some, there was a lot of upset feelings in the state of Oklahoma that Oklahoma would go to a conference and just leave Oklahoma State behind. Uh, I mean, I think very similar to even what Texas A&M did, moving to the SEC, and not to that same degree in terms of taking them with them, but separation of that rivalry. And we've seen for various reasons, whatever reason that you want to mention, if it's because of the rigors of the schedule or whether it's hurt feelings or whatever, Texas and Texas A&M have not, and they won't even agree to play each other in a bowl game right at this point, right? So it's unfortunate. I think it's the one drawback of conference realignment that happens, and we lose some of those true rivalries. But at the same time, it allows new rivalries to kind of to manifest and kind of create themselves from that perspective. I think LSU and Texas A&M has become a little bit of a rivalry on that side of things. So I think unfortunately it'll be one of those things, Mark, where Oklahoma and Oklahoma State still may play each other maybe once or twice in a 10-year period. But I think you still have to, if you're Oklahoma, still you have to tread lightly. I think, especially early on as you're getting into this conference, and with how tough the conference schedule is, you don't necessarily want to set yourself up with a couple of big time opponents in the non-conference. I think what some of the SEC teams have done, which is which I think has proved to be, pretty successful for them, is, the SEC always gets the black eye in late November for the for that week where there's a lot of FCS opponents, or there's a lot of non P5 opponents that are on their schedule from a non-conference side. But you see a lot of them play a pretty solid opponent, maybe a lower tier power five team, or a higher tier group of five team, and then you've got then a lower, a kind of a middle tier of the group of five, and then quite a few of them play FCS opponents as well. So I think you'll still continue to see that, like I said, especially early on, because I don't think you want to give you want to give your school and your teams the biggest opportunity to be successful. And I think if you've got Oklahoma State in there every year, and you still got some some non-conference games with some fairly decent teams, then I think it's one of those things where you don't have a break to a certain degree.